the Union budget that has been announced by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, there has been a significant amount of allocation for the space sector. The centre has allocated approximately 13,000 crore rupees to the Space Department. Additionally, Sitharaman has announced that the government will establish a venture capital which is worth 1,000 crore rupees. This additional allocation is aimed to boost India's space sector by 5 times in the next 10 years. This fund can be a game changer for startups and small businesses in this sector. There has been a straight 18% hike in allocation of the space technology. The number of space startups in India has skyrocketed to nearly 200 this year. Hence, the budget allocation is a result of the boom in this sector. The space economy, in fact, has been expected to grow $44 billion by the year of 2033. With projects like the Gaganyaan mission, Chandrayaan-4 and the launch of second spaceport in Tamil Nadu, what can we expect from the space sector is the big question. Joining us at this point is Professor Satya Chakravarti, co-founder Agnikul Cosmos, also with us, Group Captain V.N. Jha, Senior Scientist. Suresh Nayak, former scientist, ISRO is live with us. Wing Commander S. Sudhakaran, CEO, Q-Gates Technology, also joins us live. Welcome all of you and thank you for being with us today. Professor Chakravarti, let me begin with you first. What did you make of the provisions for the space sector in the budget of 2024 and which way is this sector headed in the next few years?
Right. So I see that this particular kind of fund that has been announced was also indicated, not exactly crystallized in the interim budget. I think there was a deep tech fund that was being talked about, but specifically now there is a space fund, if I may. And the way this actually gets distributed, or trickles down, or let's say how the whole thing shakes down is, I think normally the government sets up like a fund of funds where they would allocate this to a bunch of different other VCs, and the VCs will apply mandates that are given by the government in order to be able to fund space tech startups and so on. So this is typically the route that is being taken in the recent past by government, provided funds for venture capital. That is one major take that I believe will actually be very useful. Because the VCs will also actually have to be accountable in terms of how much of the funds are actually getting deployed in which financial year, and how much is actually being reserved for a follow-on capital and so on. So they need to develop a investment thesis for utilizing these funds in an appropriate manner. So I think this will definitely help a whole bunch of startups that are kind of starved for funds in this particular space because of the long gestation periods that it takes for us to be able to get to a proof of concept stage itself. But in addition to that, I think there is a necessity for a fund separately, not necessarily for venture funding, in terms of supporting the startups in testing facilities for the proof of concepts that they are actually after. And that's something that we should be discussing much more than just the venture funding itself. But off the bat, I think it's a hugely welcome step in this particular area.
Yes. Let me bring you in here as well, Group Captain V.N. Jha. Were you satisfied with the allocations for the space sector, the boost that the union budget proposes for this sector in the coming years, or did you believe more was needed?
Uday, a very good evening to you. There is a bit of misnomer of budget allocation as far as the R&D is concerned, DRDO is concerned. In 2014, we had undergone a major shift in the understanding. Earlier, what used to happen, whatever was the allocation, if you were unable to spend those allocations, it is to lapse, and then again you had to ask for it. But in 2014, that was the major milestone, that there is some allocation. The moment your prediction is more than that, government automatically gives you there in that, especially in the DRDO, in the R&D sector. It is the very intense technology oriented department. So there we had a change of the policy in 2014, wherein whatever was our requirement, whether it is allocated in the budget session on so-and-so of April or June or not, it is already given. You can take it for granted that it is already allocated to you. So you can go ahead with your program. That was the major shift. And of course, in the space, we have got already the Gaganyaan program. There are series of launches which is due to take place in the coming months. There is a Chandrayaan-4, which Modi government has given this mission for going to the moon again, and with bringing back the spacemen samples from there. Indian space station is another objective that we have got in front of us. Artemis program is the one with which Modi government had made some MOU with the NASA. So, there's a series of laid down launches there. On top of this, the armed forces also is looking to exploit the space sector to the best of its uses. Right now, we don't have any dedicated space forces, but surely Indian Armed Forces is already doing something onto this, and ISRO is the main hub through which it will be going there. So there is a series of it. Whether the allocation to the eyes for the optics meets all those requirements or not, we scientists are not concerned about it, because we are certain, we are absolutely sure that moment our requirement is projected for any program which may come during this time, it will be allocated by the government of India. That is the understanding that we already have. So we are not affected by that. But yes, major programs, where you have to make the launchers, you have to make the various either the PSLV or GSLV or other vehicles. It needs certain pre-fixed budget. So ISRO has got a separate allocation, and DRDO has got another separate allocations. You may be aware that many of the programs that Gaganyaan will be taking, it is coming through the DRDO also. So the money is already there. The understanding with the government is already rock solid, that the moment we have our requirement projected to the government of India, it will be automatically be given. That much of a cushion is already there. So we are not much affected. But then, yes, as far as the defense is concerned, defense has got that problem still, that whatever is the allocation made, if you're unable to spend that, then you have a problem. If your allocation is less than what you have projected, again there is a problem. And Ministry of Defense, it has got a lot of modernization plan in place right now. One, of course, is that LCA, that is the major, technology intensive program that is going on there. LCA 1A is under acquisition. And I understand about 3.5 squadron have already been delivered. More has to come. So there is something coming up there. 3 days back, you must have read that the Su-30 MKI Mark India is looking for very major upgrades to make it 4.5 generation of the aircraft to meet any of the challenges in the future for next 30 years. That is another allocation that government of India has to look into it. And besides, the Navy, the Army, all these are going through a dream period right now, where Atmanirbhar plan is going on, that is in place. For the Atmanirbhar plan also, allocation has to be made, government has to pay our own companies, but that money remains here within India. So let's see how all it is transforming. Some talks are also going on with the Rafale Navy, whether our second aircraft carrier can have Rafale Navy, or our LCA Navy has already done all testing of deck landing on aircraft carrier.
Yes.
Whether that goes through. So all these are there in place. Let's see how it transforms. But we are surely going to have...
We're headed in the right direction. We're headed in the right direction. Suresh Naik, come in here on the budget's allocation for the space sector. Were you satisfied? And, what further is needed to propel our space economy to where we expect it to stand by 2033?
Yeah, actually, I am fairly satisfied with what government has allocated. And you see how the whole system in ISRO works as far as the budget allocation and the actual working in ISRO is every year ISRO makes a plan, projection to the central government about what are the funds required. And that depends upon their planning for the next, the new future, and then their capability to do the work in-house as well as outside. And of course, it should not be exceeding too much compared to the preceding year. So that way, once it goes to the ISRO's, Government of India's finance this thing, then they study and do the allocation. And mostly we have seen, got the experience that the allocation is not far away from the projection. It is more or less matching. So it is important to make consider how much you can spend depending upon your manpower, depending upon other projects which are going on simultaneously, and all the new commitments which we are having. Now, you see, specifically, now if you consider today, the work on so many important projects is going on in ISRO. Of course, Gaganyaan is the first one which is to take off this year. I think July 20, this year is the first G1 flight, which is the first test flight, and December 24 is scheduled to be the second test flight for Gaganyaan. And mid 25 is going to be the real human space flight for Gaganyaan. So 3 flights are already accounted for. So you have to see how much money we are going to utilize for these 3 flights. And this whole program is costed at about 9,000 odd crores rupees. And then work is going on for Mangalyaan 2, which also is going to require a lot of money for development. Then there is another project, big project coming up, that is Shukrayaan, Venus mission. Like that, already, the money has been allocated for these, and we are going to spend year-wise for all these projects. So considering that, this 13,000 crore is good enough. Now coming back to the 1,000 crore for venture capital funds, as already it has been mentioned, that is the one which is really going to give a growth impetus to the space economy, because the startups, they grow very fast and they start with very low scale and suddenly grow very fast. So that venture capital will encourage so many private industries to jump into this. You see, already I think it was mentioned that 189 or 200 startups today are working in space, whereas by 2014 it was only 1. So there is a tremendous growth taking place in the private sector, and that is not accounted for anywhere except that 1,000 crore venture capital funding by the central government. So if you consider all this, then I would say that the Indian space economy is really taking off, because I think already it was mentioned by 2033, it is going to reach $14 billion US dollars. That is a huge amount. Today we are just utilizing 2% of the global market which is available. That is going to grow up to 10%. That is what is expected. So I think that by opening, another important thing is 100% FDI has been announced in space sector by the government of India. This is also going to give a lot of boost. So all these factors are considering, I am sure that India is moving with great speed in the space sector. I am happy about it.
Yes. Wing Commander Sudhakaran, do you believe that we are taking strides in that direction? As Suresh just said, also as far as the budget is concerned, has it given the correct direction to the space economy, to the space sector? Were you happy with the provisions, the outlay, and the announcements? And also, Wing Commander Sudhakaran, where do you expect India to be in 2033?
Good evening, Uday. I think I would be lying if I say I'm happy with what the budget has presented. It was disappointing, the least to say. That is not to put the government down. This is our own creation. If this is the kind of mandate that we are going to throw up, I know the Prime Minister's hands were tied up. He did have to, cater to his allies and then allocate a significant amount of money both to Andhra as well as in Bihar. Having said that, if I put another question to you, that had the BJP won more than 300 seats, would this been the budget that the Prime Minister would have given? We all would have said a resounding no. If that answer is no, then when we say that we are happy, we are lying to ourselves. And I don't want to do that. I have to put this in a perspective. The United States of America spends something like 73 billion. That is its average spending on space. The Chinese National Space Agency has a budget of something like 14 to 15 billion, and that's declared. The undeclared part, we don't need to even talk about it. What are we talking about today? 1 billion. So while we aspire to be the third largest economy and we want to become a world superpower, we are allocating peanuts for the next generation of super tech, deep tech, and stealth tech. Space is very, very important. And it is not enough that you fund ISRO and then you tom into the market saying that I launched this many satellites and my PSLVs. Those are bygone glories. There is a lot of catching up that we need to do in space. And for that, only money can help. If you call Professor Satya and ask him how much money would he need to actually bring his dreams into realities, I am pretty much sure he will not quote anywhere less than 20, 30 billion. That is the kind of potential intellect that we have. The government, by not giving the money to the deserving scientists, to the entrepreneurial community, it is actually doing great injustice. But having said that, it is not the blame that BJP or the Prime Minister alone needs to take. It is we collectively as a nation, we have let down because somebody waged a disinformation campaign on India and then they were successful. That is why the election threw up the result that it threw up. Not that the constitution was in danger, not that the democracy was in danger, but our minds were in danger. We are an intellectually lazy community. Unless and until we are not cornered and kicked to the last corner, we don't respond. It is nice to say we are happy with this and that. No, I am certainly not happy. I am today agonized. But will I blame the Prime Minister and Finance Minister for it? Probably not, because it is probably my doing also, because of course I alone couldn't have done much, but then collectively we as a nation have pushed us into this corner. These 5 years are very, very important for us. And I've been telling this. People have not woken up to the threats of AGI. The likes of OpenAI, the likes of Tesla are burning something like 100 billion on one single technology. And we are talking about, 1,000 crores, which actually doesn't even mean a sneeze in this particular industry. Ask my fellow panelists how much a rocket burns in only the fuel. Just to, cross a few kilometers from ground. That is the kind of money that we need.
Yes.
Not that we don't have the money, just that our ecosystem is so hostile, our policy making is so clueless, and probably we as a country lack vision. See, when we talk about the 5 trillion economy, we need to understand we cannot breach the 5 trillion economy by planning for a linear increase of your per capita income. See, if you look at China and US, both of them have trillion-dollar entities. Your Apple and Nvidia alone surpasses Indian GDP. We need to talk about making at least 4 to 5 deep tech entities a trillion-dollar entity. That is when these trillion-dollar entities will actually, spur up growth. It will create more employment, and that is the employment that is going to contribute to your GDP. And if you plan on that scale, we are talking about a GDP of 15 trillion. That's what will match China. And our planning is, very, very off the plane. We are just not doing it right. We are trying to be too conservative. We are trying to, be happy about our 7% growth or 8% growth because rest everybody is running very slow. No, sir, we need to run fast. We can. We have the capacity. We just need to put the decisions in place. If you have given 1 crore individual 6,000 rupees, how is it different from the Katakat scheme? We all, complained about it, criticized it. You have just brought another Katakat scheme. And do you think that these guys who are going to get 6,000 rupees for internship are going to build rocket science for India? No. The scientists need to be empowered. They need to be fed money with, and none of that has happened. And that has not happened because of the politics that got played in June. And I'll rest my case there.
Well, at the end of the day, the mandate has been delivered by the people. It has to be respected, of course. But you're upset with what happens, when coalition pressures are exerted. Let me bring back in Professor Chakravarti into the conversation. Professor Chakravarti, now as far as, of course, the balance is concerned, do you believe we are striking the right balance with private and public participation in the space sector? The opening up of the space sector for startups, private sector, has that happened at the right time? And is it happening at the right pace, or is more exacerbation needed?
Right. So let me just pick up from the previous point that was made. The way we perceive this is the government is actually doing what best it can in the given situation. And it did open up the government in the previous regime. And they actually walked the talk in terms of setting up the in-space and supporting startups and so on. In-space has two parts. One is promotion, the other one is authorization. The promotion part actually allows them to do a lot more things like education of the manpower development for private space uptake and so on. Authorization is where they support startups by allowing them to access ISRO facilities and so on. I feel that definitely both of them require more things to be done. I think the promotion part, there is a good amount of work that's being done by the IITs in terms of NPTEL courses, which are, let us say, online courses and online certification programs with proctored physical exams and all of that stuff. So the promotion involves like space technology courses that can be done without much of funding today with the kind of today's technologies. The authorization part requires significant amount of testing facilities to be developed for supporting startups, because today startups are primarily boxed into either a launch vehicle or a satellite company. And if you just do two of these, there is nothing much you can do further. That is to say, for example, there are about 2 launch vehicle private companies in the country that are emerging significantly. And then there are maybe about 3 or 4 satellite companies. This actually leaves a lot of other, young, talented people to try to do things that are very, very esoteric. Like, for example, in-orbit propulsion or in-orbit transfer of satellites and all kinds of things, which actually do not have any proof of concepts that have been done by either an ISRO or a NASA or any of those things before. So if these startups are actually trying to explore those spaces, they require testing facilities, and that's something that I think InSpace should probably do. And that should not come out of this 1,000 crores. The 1,000 crores should actually go to the startup directly for developing technologies. But there is a significant amount of testing, that needs to be supported by InSpace through ISRO or by itself independently. And I think that will be the crux. The government always does what it can within the contours of the democracy that we are, and it's not new to us. I mean, I think for 70 plus years, we have always been towing the line of a pro-poor economy, left of center, all of that stuff. So we are new to. We are not new to it. I mean, it's just that we have to accommodate. We have to accept this. I think, let's say, for example, 1,000 crores actually goes into the VC ecosystem. We have to make sure that the VCs actually spend it instead of actually holding it and hoarding it. Like they actually say they have a funding winter and all of that stuff. What winter? I mean, there's like that may be a Western problem, right? In the Indian
Yes.
context, actually play straight and then expend that money and then showcase that they are actually able to support startups and so on. That is one part, but otherwise, I think ISRO InSpace should actually allocate some funding for testing facilities is what I would suggest.
All right.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.